What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Unqualified Film Bros podcast. We are here talking about, you guessed it, the new trailer for Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Let's go.
All right, now that Declan's got that out of the way, we're talking about Top Gun Maverick, our first review in a few weeks. Good to get back to this. Top Gun Maverick, I'll start us off, is better than the original film.
Yeah.
Gentlemen,
honestly,
thoughts?
I honestly have to entirely agree with you. Like the first Top Gun, I watched it before seeing this one, and I'm glad I did because I think it is kind of necessary. I did not connect with it. Despite despite it being an iconic film, I just didn't find the story all that good. So then Top Gun Maverick decided to do this really interesting thing, to paraphrase you, George, in your Letterboxd review, of having a compelling story this time around, which made me enjoy the film a lot more than I did the first one. Not that the first one's bad, just this one is an unambiguous sequel that is better than the original.
It's tough to compare quality because I feel like both of them are such movies of their time. They're clearly written with their audiences in mind. And so the first Top Gun, it is completely an 80s movie. I don't think the story is necessarily the problem. I think the writing is very 80s. It's very cheesy sometimes. And so it's Goose's death, while it's sad, it's it doesn't really bring down the movie that much because everyone else is having so much fun. It's 5 minutes of somberness and then back.
Plus, Tom Cruise in the first one, he has this stupid face on whenever he smiles. It's
the only one he's got, Declan. What do you want him to
do? True. That is very
it's
true.
Like when he runs.
That's good. But I think I feel like Maverick I didn't honestly as much as a main character in the first one, but in the sequel I feel like him dealing with old age and sort of being past his prime, I feel was a much better and more compelling motivator for his character in the second film than being Top Gun, the first one.
It's kind of weird, right? This one is sort of just like Top Gun, but with extra layers. So you got the main characters, Iceman and Maverick, who are played by Miles Teller and Hangman. I don't know the actor's name, but
Glenn Powell.
Yeah, Glenn Powell. But yeah, Hangman and Rooster are basically the same characters.
They fill the same archetypes.
Yeah.
You've got the bully, and you've got the hard-headed protagonist.
But Glenn Powell does a great job being such an asshole. Even more.
It's sort of likable. It's the same with Val Kilmer.
You don't hate him.
Yeah, you don't hate him. It's sort of just God, that guy.
Yeah.
But then they become your friend at the end. And you're like, oh, you know what, that guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think Glenn Powell's character in Hangman is actually more of an asshole than Val Kilmer's was. Val Kilmer actually kind of felt like just a by the book kind of character, because they wanted to highlight more of Maverick's wild sensibilities in the first one. This, I think they just leaned into Hangman being an asshole, which worked, right? Ben, to your point earlier at the top of the episode where you said that each film was written for its time, it's easier to write a film now about just a straight up asshole than a by the book rule follower, which is kind of what
it's a different kind of asshole.
And I think it's a similar thing, just relating to that, whereas that was the central friction in the first movie. The central friction in this movie is definitely Rooster and Maverick, and it's sort of not necessarily following the rule book, but following their own ideas. Rooster always is thinking too much, he's flying too slow. I think the underlying thing there, I'm not really sure exactly, but it seems he's kind of afraid to die too.
Yeah. Don't think. You're thinking.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
and then he wants to follow in his dad's footsteps, but he also doesn't want to follow him that far.
And he resents Tom Cruise's Maverick for like seemingly holding him back when in some ways
he didn't seemingly hold him back. He did
no,
hold
he
him
actually
back.
not even.
He pulled his papers from the Naval Academy.
Yeah.
You set a guy's career back 4 years. He's gonna have resentment towards you, and then on top of that, you add the layer of being Goose's son.
Yeah.
He's stuck in between two different and conflicting storylines and motivations.
Talking about
and
Rooster?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was why they had to sort of let Hangman just be sort of like, sort of like the asshole that's gonna like, take the day at the end, because that's,
you also get to see how good Hangman is, right? You don't really get to see that with Iceman.
Very, very brief redemptive arc at the end.
Yeah.
In the same way that Tom Kazansky did at the end of the first film, because you don't really see Iceman, for lack of a better joke here, you don't really see Iceman melt until, you can be my wingman anytime.
Yeah.
And like
in the last 2 seconds
it's
of the film.
last moment of the film.
Honestly,
essentially. And in this film, you don't really, you've got a little bit of Hangman saying like, he's there for support and he wants to go join the fight to help Rooster and Maverick get out of the situation where they're stranded and their planes have been hit. But then, he comes in for the last, rescue, the last ditch sort of, Maverick and Rooster are out of ammunition. They're, essentially dead in the water. And he comes in for the, swoops in and saves the day, as it were. So I think you get a little bit more of the redemptive arc, as you guys were saying, with Hangman than what you saw with Iceman in the first film.
Yeah, and I think the essential difference is, like Max said, Iceman wasn't really a villain in the same way. I shouldn't even be villain, like a bad guy or like the bully.
He was an antagonist solely because he happened to be better than Maverick was in the first film.
It really was just like two egos and different ideologies, rather than like one of them being the good guy and the bad guy. So it was more just like at the end they sacrificed their own egos. It was their problem together. It wasn't just one of them.
Yeah.
But the thing about egos being sacrificed, Ben, and I'm glad you bring it up, is that in this film, Maverick had to sacrifice his ego a little bit. At the beginning of the film, he's talking to Admiral Kane, played by Ed Harris, who's criminally underused. And he's sent back to, he's dispatched back to Top Gun, and he says to John Hamm's character, I'm not a teacher. This isn't me. I just want to manage expectations. He's saying like this, I'm not going to change who I am. And then over the course of the film, as he realizes what he has to do to reconnect with Rooster and what he has to do to make the mission a success and to keep his own job, because John Hamm's character, and forgive me for forgetting his name, fires him from the Navy essentially.
Yeah.
But think about what gets him back.
Yeah.
It's classic Maverick, which is stealing a plane and just doing it. If that's not quintessential Maverick, then I don't know what is. He gets fired from his job and then he just goes rogue and steals an F-18 or whatever the plane is and flies and does the thing 15 seconds faster than
I love that this movie is so accurate with its flying and the dog fights and everything that they've done.
Cinematography is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Hold on. But they've completely neglected accuracy in the naval and military. If all these people would be court-martialed, they'd probably be in jail.
Well, the thing is,
he does technically court-martial you in his defense, but
that's fair. But like they wouldn't actually get they would actually just
probably
at the same time. This film knows that it's a movie.
Yeah.
The first film felt like 100. I texted you guys. Felt like 110 minutes of come join the Navy. This is our life. We have fun. We play volleyball on the beach.
No, come join the Navy. To quote
This film
name.
knows it's Hollywood and it has a Hollywood feel. The stakes feel earned. It's
Yes.
character driven instead of story driven. It has emotional weight that wasn't there in the first film.
Mhm.
I can genuinely say this is a great film.
Like even just
And that
as
wasn't there for the first film.
Yeah.
You can't say that about Top Gun. Top Gun, I think it gets a bad rap. I'm
It's
just
really
being
tough,
honest, it gets a
like-
bad rap. I think it's better than most people make it out to be. But Top Gun Maverick is a clear step above, if not 2 steps.
I have to make the point that Top Gun, like why people it's famous, why people love it. It's not for the I mean, it's entertaining enough. Seeing Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer, they got good chemistry, but it was because of the practical effects of actually flying the planes and the dogfights.
I think they all have their licenses now. Their pilots licenses.
Huh.
Including-
not their fighter pilot
Yeah,
licenses,
but like they learned to fly planes.
they learned
the-
how to fly these planes, and they went through like basic training at the very least. And I looked it up when I was coming back from the film, and they spent $11,000 an hour from the air. They paid the Air Force $11,000 an hour to be able to use the planes and the footage and everything.
Mhm.
Worth it.
Yeah.
So worth it.
Yeah.
And it's awesome.
I also just gotta say, I feel like the having like a central like thing you are trying to do, like, oh, we need to accomplish this incredibly complex maneuver, and like that, and one that we can all clearly understand, I feel like is again much better than the first ones, just kind of vague, being at the top, and then oh, we also have a dogfight at the end, kind of like it felt like
It was
the
a much
way
more
that they
80s movie.
did-
That's all I can say.
The way that they did the dogfight at the end wasn't like in the first film where it's literally, here's your training and then here's, how it plays out in the real world.
Yeah.
This film, you do the mission and the mission is a success. They blow up the, silo, the underground silo. But the mission ends and then you get into the real world stakes
Yeah.
because they're shot down on exit.
Mhm.
They have to figure out how to, Maverick has to hide behind a fallen tree to get away from an Apache helicopter. There are real, in the moment, there is real in the moment chaos. And, you say in training, like throw your rule book out the window. You actually have to in this sense, because you've got guys like Rooster and guys like Hangman who are disobeying orders, and as Ben said, would be discharged or at least given a court martial.
Honestly,
as I think you said, Ben.
executed.
Okay, Declan.
Yeah.
Okay, Lieutenant Tom
I don't know what they
Kazansky.
did.
But these guys are knowingly breaking the rules to essentially improvise the end of the journey to and from the mission, which I think is done really well from a story perspective. The stakes of each moment, as each situation resolves itself and then a new problem arises, the stakes elevate themselves and escalate moment to moment in a way that feels organic to the real world and also super Hollywood in a way that really works.
Yeah.
I agree. And, part of it is the underlying mission that Maverick was given by John Hamm's character, which is build a team. When you get two guys like Rooster and Hangman after the character arcs that they have throughout this movie, and you have them making these kind of sacrifices to go against orders, to sort of go against what their arc has followed up until this point, to disobey orders, that's success. That's a success in terms of building a team, in terms of what the broader objective of the mission was. And so it just goes to show you Tom Cruise's Maverick ends up being a teacher that he never thought he would be.
I think the other thing that really needs to be said is, like George was saying, there is emotional weight, and I think a large part of that is because it is a sequel, and they were using Goose's death as like the main crux of the movie.
Talk to me, Goose.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk to me, Goose. Like,
Talk to me, Dad.
Yeah. That was
I think
Yeah, it was a
that
nice moment for
not
Rooster.
really present in
Yeah.
the first movie. The first movie was a lot more of an action film. It really, like, yes, there was Goose's death, and like, yes, death happens, but like, it really didn't feel the weight of it like this film, because you're dealing with his son all grown up and in the same position. You feel a greater like weight for these characters, like, oh, they can die. The first Top Gun movie, I mean, Goose died, but you always knew that like Maverick and Iceman were never gonna die in that film, and they were invincible.
Yeah.
And in this film, like, I wasn't entirely sure, like, oh, is Tom? I thought for sure, Rooster was gonna come back, but I didn't know whether Maverick would. But I feel like it really kept you guessing, like, what's gonna happen here. The suspense was really good with it. It wasn't just action.
Yeah. And also, speaking of like good moments that aren't just the action, I do feel that it was a bit like meta because of the real life situation, but I did like Iceman's appearance. It's kind of it was nice, and all that. Like, knowing.
I mean,
I
Val
also I
Kilmer-
do like his presence in the film, just kind of like how he's sort of been this guy who's been helping Maverick, his entire career. Like, I do like that element.
Yeah, it was essential in the sequel to only use Val Kilmer to the extent to which he could.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you hit the nail on the head there, Declan, with having his presence even over text with Maverick.
Mm-hmm.
He's a big part of the movie, even though he only appears in one scene. And I think, that relationship, as it plays out in the first two acts of the film, and then right towards the end of the second act when Maverick goes to, see him, that relationship is a lot of the emotional weight of the movie, because you're seeing how Maverick is watching the world around him change. And he's not, he is and he isn't the hothead anymore. And I think he sees, his relationship with Iceman as sort of, the old guard, as it were. And then you get into the relationships that he oversees with Phoenix and Bob and, Hangman and Rooster. And we'll talk about Bob.
I love Bob.
But he sees, this class of Top Gun graduates coming back, and it's not the same as it was when he was at Top Gun as a student with Goose and with Iceman.
Yeah, I mean, Val Kilmer, Kazansky, he grounds Maverick, and he tethers him to a world that he is familiar to and with, in a way that not even Ed Harris or John Hamm can provide, because they're not on his side. They're not his friend. They're not advocating for him. It's his old buddy Iceman that is coming to his defense, who's
kept him in the Navy for all this year, for all these years.
Navy. Yeah, it wouldn't have happened without that relationship.
Conveniently moving you around, like what Ed Harris's Admiral character says, just like your guardian angel. But I don't know. I thought that was funny.
But yeah, it was a tender moment to see Val Kilmer there, and they worked in his real life health affliction, which has just been terrible for how long he's dealt with the throat cancer.
Yeah.
But to work that into the script made sense for the character, and I feel like it was a good tribute to Kilmer as an actor and his legacy to the franchise. And having his death scene in there really, tugged on the heartstrings of both the audience and of Maverick.
Oh yeah.
Because he had to go through, he already lost Goose. He lost, Rooster in a sense, because Rooster doesn't care about him anymore
Yeah.
because of the pulling papers thing, and whether or not he was responsible for Goose's death. He's lost so much, Maverick has, and now that Iceman's gone, he's even towards the end of the movie, he's finding his place in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they handled that. They handled it well. Though another thing that this only just occurred to me now when you talk about place in the world. I just realized they set up, like, I feel like we should talk about the cast and how they're bizarre. Like, there
Yes.
are certain actors there are many great uses of great actors. I think all the people who were on there were fantastic, but Ed Harris is the most obvious example, but also like Manny Giacchino.
Jacinto.
Jacinto, thank you. In the movie, but like Manny doesn't have a line, and Ed Harris, he's set up as like the drone guy, and then just doesn't really appear again.
I feel like Ed Harris's character, Admiral Kane, should have come back later in the film, but at the same time, you don't need his character past establishing where Maverick is in the world at the beginning of the film.
That is true.
I have to make the point that I don't think it would make sense, because Admiral Kane clearly is overseeing like weapons and like aircraft. He's not overseeing missions, which
True.
I guess is Iceman's division. Puts him in charge of this.
Yeah, they have the same rank. Iceman is an admiral in the second film.
It wouldn't make any sense for him to like come in. I mean, maybe after Iceman dies, but like they've already, I mean, the mission's sort of like there already.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just do different things, right? Like Iceman oversees, like you said, missions, and he might have lots of purview over Top Gun and what goes on there, because he has obvious pull there, and commands John Hamm. But Ed Harris's character, I think, might be like R&D or some technology based something more so than anything else. So he wasn't really relevant to the rest of the story. And I also think it's an interesting addition because of where the film ends up, right? Tom Cruise ends up using an F-16, 14, whatever, like an
F-16.
older plane.
I think it was an F-16.
Instead of like a new 5th generation, like they're trying to fight. That Ed Harris is sort of overseeing technological developments, where the first scene in the movie is him hitting 10G.
But also that's a moment
like,
with
what?
minimal stakes, because he's going up 10, 10.1, 10.2, 10.3. He's not going to crash and die.
No, like something's gonna go wrong.
You've got 2 hours and 6 minutes left in the movie.
I wish they would have started just Mavericks, in this plane, all of a sudden he dies.
Well, that scene, and I want to talk about the
whole, Suicide Squad.
Oh my gosh! Yes,
That's true.
That opening sequence where he crashes and he goes into the diner, and he's all banged up, and he looks like he's been through a lot, and then he goes, "Where am I?" And this little kid says, "Earth," and it's such a great. For a dramatic action film, there are these moments of levity that exceed, the comedic elements of the first film. And it's done in such a way that you see humor in the movie. It's not a comedy, but, as heavy as it gets at certain points, it also can be really fun. And I think it
Tom
finds
Cruise
that
pushing
balance.
Miles Teller was really funny.
I think
Yeah, it was.
Shoving him to the ground. Like, what the hell are you doing?
Yes.
Yeah, that scene was great. The offense and defense at the same time football game.
Yeah. Yes.
I was like, wait a minute, they're not playing football right. Why are they playing football with two balls? What's
Yeah.
going on? How are they making this work? And then, Maverick explained it. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense for fighter pilots to be training this way. It's like,
And
oh, well, you wanted them to be a team, so here's your team.
I think
It
they
was a
should
great
have
scene, and
made.
it did the volleyball scene from the first movie better.
Yes,
John Hamm
yes,
walks
because
away
it's actually
just like,
important
oh,
to the
well,
plot.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
All right.
It's
a
like,
lot
oh,
like,
they're becoming a team. Like that makes sense. Unlike in the first one where it's wow, being in the Navy makes you cool looking, guys. Look at how cool you look when you play volleyball. Here it's like, oh, they're becoming a team, which is
Declan,
genuinely.
I bet you look awesome playing volleyball.
Wow, thanks, George. I imagine you do as well.
We should play
Do you
volleyball.
do you dance like Miles Teller dances?
I can only dream of dancing that well.
Top Gun really is.
No,
like,
but I play the
nearly
piano as well.
That's
is-
true.
Is such an 80s movie. It's the most 80s movie, or at least one of them. From
Mhm.
soundtrack to the writing, and this one just like reminds me of just a standard blockbuster. It's got good writing, like you said. There's humor at times, characters are well written, stories well written. Just a good all-around blockbuster, which I think is pretty rare these days. I mean, I like Marvel movies, but it's clear that Marvel, DC, and all of the other sequel, prequel, remake department
Mhm.
has sort of sucked the energy out of any original blockbuster or even sequel blockbuster in a while.
Mhm.
Um, and I think more specifically, this is clearly a sequel and a blockbuster that has been made with passion.
Yeah.
I mean, blockbusters are designed to get people in theaters. They're designed to be big events, but it seems like the ones that have come out, in recent years are really sort of like put together to make money. I mean, certainly like, all of the sequels that have come out, there are some good ones and there are some really bad ones that are just full of, fan service, just callbacks to the original movie. I think this one did a really good job giving those, moments, but really not too many. There are allusions to the original, clearly. The characters are, archetypal, transfers back to the original movie, but it does function on its own. It's probably, like you said, a better film.
Yeah.
And I think that just has to do with this was clearly people put passion and like effort into it. It wasn't to make money, it was to make the film.
Yeah.
And I think that you can tell the difference.
We're seeing that in terms of quality this year, though, with people putting real care into big movies, like Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh yeah.
Is critically and commercially successful. Not, it's not.
I have to make this point just because Everything Everywhere All at Once is still an indie movie.
But it's still in theaters, Ben.
Yeah, but what I mean is
it has longevity.
Not a lot of money to make this film, which
not a lot of money to make the film. It's not a blockbuster in that sense, but it is making a lot of money over a long time at the box office. It's critically successful as well. It's one of the highest rated movies on Letterboxd that you will see.
Like maybe this is the shift in what like our definition of a blockbuster, right? Like there's the more traditional ones like Top Gun Maverick on one side.
Well,
I still
let me give another example.
I mean, they're not going to compete with something like a Marvel movie, which is what I'm saying.
Right, but that's what I'm saying, is that they're shifting definitions.
But you bring in a movie like The Batman.
Like, has recently come out. Like this one did well. This is like an old blockbuster. So I'm curious if these movies can still be made, if they're not, helmed by Tom Cruise. Making it happen.
I will once again bring up The Batman. It's a passion project for Matt Reeves. It's DC, but you can tell there's so much care that goes into the making of the film, and then it's commercially successful. Yes, you have the draw of it being a Batman movie.
I want to make that distinction though, because I think it's very different. Like, yes, I mean, Marvel makes plenty of good films. They're going to make plenty of creative things, but at the heart of it, it's a Marvel film. Blockbusters used to be, an original idea, like, Back to the Future or Avatar, not that long ago, Star Wars. These are original projects that create these sort of worlds that spawn the sequels, not something that's based on something else. So I do want to make that distinction because I do find that to be critical. Christopher Nolan's like the closest you get these days to making those blockbuster films. And so we'll see what happens with his new films, but I don't find that there's a lot of filmmakers like that, like there used to be.
Yeah, but Ben, how much of Christopher Nolan's sort of pull to the box office is a result of him making the Batman trilogy? And think of the films that he came out with after them, or sort of in between, right? With Interstellar, Inception, Tenet, Dunkirk. I said a bunch of those out of order, but you get my point in that, like, yes, he does make big films. That's his thing. But how much of that is drawn in how much of that audience is drawn in because of superhero films?
I think that's a little bit of an unfair comparison. And also, I mean, just because people, he got famous because of Nolan films. Also, I don't think that's really true because he did The Prestige before Batman films.
He did Batman Begins and then The Prestige, just so we got the timeline right.
That's true.
Oh yeah.
2004.
Memento.
He did Memento first, though.
Memento.
Yeah, but that wasn't like the same level. I mean, I wouldn't consider that a blockbuster.
I think that was technically indie.
But the only thing that I mean is like, Nolan still gets money to make his original projects. Even big directors, when they get that money, they're not necessarily given that freedom like no one seems to be given.
Mm-hmm.
But I think movies like passion project movies, right? They're going to be expensive because they're big, bold, and usually creative in one way or another, sometimes multiple ways. But when you get that leash as a director and you get creative license, that opens so many avenues and doors for you. I mean, think of what Matt Reeves can do now with telling new Batman stories, or other films that he wants to
I
make.
wasn't saying that
like that sticks with
I
you
wasn't
for
saying
a long
he
time.
can't make a block. I was just saying the Batman I wouldn't consider the same type of movie just because it's fake. I wasn't making the exclusion that they're not important, stepping stone. But I think like the main point that I'm making is like original ideas, a unique vision, unique feeling to a movie, not based on something else.
So let's circle back to Top Gun Maverick and talk about the cast real quick. Tom Cruise, I don't think is going to get award season buzz, even though he's better in this film than he is in the first film. He's okay. He's Maverick. He falls right back into the role. He does a really good job playing what he's used to.
He's Tom Cruise. Like
yeah.
Whatever your opinion on Tom Cruise is, and I like Tom Cruise. It's like it carries over into this film,
Yeah. As for the rest of the cast, I mean, Miles Teller was much more Whiplash and less, Fantastic Four. He was really, really good, and I've said it, countless times over text and in Letterboxd reviews. But Miles Teller is a dead ringer for a young Anthony Edwards. They nailed the casting choice, and then he nailed the performance.
The mustache helped.
Like the mustache. Come on, he's going the same mustache and the same facial as his dad. That's the only thing that kept getting me.
Yeah.
And then style went out like in the 80s, right?
What'd you guys think of Jennifer Connelly in this one?
Like, you gotta give credit. I feel like she somehow she like merged really well with the legacy characters to the point
she was mentioned in the first one.
She was mentioned in the first one.
She was mentioned in the first one. Oh, really? Wait. Oh, shit.
It was
I did-
heavily
just
implied at
offhandedly.
the very beginning that she was the admiral's daughter, and then she was mentioned by name.
Right. Oh, right. Okay. I will admit, I totally forgot about that.
It was very throwaway though. It wasn't like
So,
It was
okay,
subtle.
so
Penny
she isn't
Benjamin. It was like-
entirely.
It was
Uh,
blink and you miss it.
yeah, exactly. I did not make that connection until you pointed it out, and I thank you for that. But nonetheless, I genuinely felt like Jennifer Connelly never felt like this, she never felt like, oh, this character is clearly supposed to be Charlie, and we're painfully aware that this isn't Charlie. Like, she somehow felt just entirely natural, like as this long-term flame that Maverick has had on and off for many years. Like, I feel like that, I mean, it helps that Jennifer Connelly, I feel like just does a really good job in the role. But I also feel like, the script never makes it feel like she's not deserving of being
It's
there.
very organic. Her character is very organically written into Maverick's story. I agree.
Exactly. Yeah, and that I, again, testament to the screen play writers for getting that right, and not letting not making it seem like, oh, this was a last minute change when we couldn't get
Kelly McGillis.
Kelly McGillis, thank you.
McGillis.
Yeah, McGillis. Yeah, McGillis back. Yeah.
I think part of it is just because of the way that the movie works. It's very casual, other than between him and Rooster, between Maverick and Rooster. The relationships are just so casual. So it's the way that, I mean, there are also new, Ed Harris is new, John Hamm was new. The casualness of, they talk to each other. I felt like everyone just sort of blended in really well. I think they just wrote it.
Yeah.
Well. Jennifer Connelly's a good actor. She's gonna do a good job.
John Hamm.
Yeah, I mean,
oh yeah,
completely settled into the role.
Yeah. I do want to say, I don't think anyone did they all did their jobs, right? I don't think the roles called for too much, and they all did exactly what they needed to.
Yeah.
These aren't roles that are going to win you awards. I don't think anyone expects that of it, but it's still a good, film.
Yeah.
It's Die Hard was never going to win Bruce Willis an award, but it's a good film.
I mean, it should have, but but that's neither here nor there.
Did he not win greatest actor in the greatest movie of all time?
What was he going against there? What was it, 88?
Yes, 88, I think.
1988, yeah. This movie is worlds better than the first film. And Ben, you hit the nail on the head there with, it's a movie made for the 21st century. The first movie was a movie made for the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
The soundtrack is great.
By the way, I'm glad you brought up the soundtrack here.
Hans Zimmer and Lady Gaga.
Hans Zimmer, Lady Faltermeyer, Dream Blunt rotation. Am I right?
I was so confused to see them all together. And the score's good. I want to know what each of them put in there.
Lady Gaga wrote one song. Hans Zimmer did the non-Faltermeyer scoring.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I like that they brought back Danger Zone for a little bit.
I feel like you can't not do a Top Gun
theme
and not include Danger Zone.
I think they included some of the notes from the original score, little motifs and stuff.
Da, 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 da.
It's the most ridiculous.
I was gonna get my guitar and start playing that.
It does work.
In case you guys missed that, I changed Declan's name to Kenny Loggins.
I accept this. I'll also just say one thing that we were talking a little bit about this, but I just want to bring up because it was funny. It is kind of hilarious how, and I feel like the character was great. I like the character. a lot. I don't know the actress's name, but the character of Phoenix
Monica
was a really
Barbaro.
good addition. What was there?
Monica Barbaro.
Monica Barbaro. She's a great actor, but she also not completely changed the dynamic, but like, for lack of a better term, the homoeroticism of Top Gun isn't actually all that apparent in Top Gun Maverick.
Well, we were talking about this before we started
It was
recording.
made in the
If
80s.
Phoenix weren't there, the homoeroticism and those undertones would have been present in the sequel.
Without a doubt.
Her character was included, one, as a 21st century way of saying women can be fighter pilots, and they're absolutely fucking great at it.
Yeah.
Phoenix is a badass fighter, and is a fantastic character. Great performance by Mia Barbaro.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that character changes how the men interact, it's subtle because they still, they're still throwing jabs at each other. There are still,
Mm-hmm.
Hangman is still
posturing.
Hangman is still sexist.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "Oh, Phoenix called you a man. You gonna take that?" And then she throws it right back at him, like, "Not if you're okay with him calling you one," or something like that.
Yeah.
So those moments are still there. But Declan, you're absolutely right that they are dialed down in the sequel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it like,
So, go ahead.
no, just like, I was just gonna say, and it again, it felt like another thing that I like their dynamic. In general, all the pilots' dynamic in Top Gun Maverick, more than in Top Gun, where I felt there was a lot more like borderline, like just like everyone seemed to just kind of be like vaguely frat bro-ish with each other. I mean, it was like, it's, I don't know.
I mean, in the first film, Top Gun is a fraternity, essentially.
Yeah, straight, for real.
Yeah. So,
Top Gun always, it's a lot like Karate Kid, I'm starting to realize. It kind of has
talk about the most 80s movie.
Yeah. Probably compare Cobra Kai with Top Gun Maverick and find interesting.
That's a good point.
That's a good comp. I mean, Cobra Kai has also gotten critically acclaimed too, especially since it came over to Netflix.
Oh yeah.
Like it, and became a Netflix production, to clarify what my point was, right? But I mean, I think it's just this, they play on the nostalgia in ways that are overt, but they don't dominate the storylines, and they don't take away from the actual content of the story and the character motivations that are part of the storylines.
Like the main thing is just that they make their own films. Seems like, certainly I've seen the new Jurassic Park, and every time I see it, it's just like, I mean, I saw the last few as well, but they're okay, but there's too much just basing it off of, hey, you remember these movies, you liked them before, right? Watch them again.
But you see, Ben, it's
Dominion is bringing back basically the entire original cast.
Essentially it is.
Yeah.
So final thoughts on Top Gun Maverick?
No, I mean, I think you
really good film.
Summed it up well. Really good film. It's an example of a sequel better than the original.
Rare case. But I think this movie is better than the original for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a legitimately good film. It's not even just like better than the original. It's a good film.
Fun and cheesy. It's a good film.
It is a good film.
I think all people will enjoy this. Like I hear this is like doing really well among older crowds compared to other blockbusters, and it feels like this is a film anyone can get behind.
Who doesn't love Top Gun?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this film, and I'm glad that we had a chance to talk about it. So that should just about do it for this episode of Unqualified Film Bros. Next week, you guys remember we did Funky Film Reviews last week, and we had a prize for our winner. Congratulations to Goose, Ben. He was our winner of the first ever playing of Funky Film Reviews. He's going to host next week. We're going to be talking about one of his favorite movies of all time with a full-fledged review. He's going to be in the hosting chair. We're not going to spoil what it is. It's Blade Runner. We will see you
Morbius.
guys
Oh.
next week.
It's an 80s film.
It's Morbius, guys.
It's
We're
Morbius.
talking about it again.
Morbid
Morbius
time.
sweep.
It's Morbin time.
Yeah, I love when Rick Deckard says it's Morbin time. Good night.